Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled homeowner association president called the police on me for building a house on my property that was supposedly too tiny. They threatened to sue me, a disabled veteran, for having this house. I gave them hell. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the stories. So this is a story about a friend of mine that was having a ton of trouble getting his home built. This guy was in the military, and one thing to know about where I live is that the veterans have a pretty tight community. I also served, and it was through this way that I met the guy and we started to become friends without our little community group. This guy was having some trouble with his living situation and needed a new home. He got injured both while serving and then after when something went wrong in a surgery. He has a very limited mobility to the point that he is almost exclusively in a wheelchair and also had issues with his lungs and breathing. He is not some super old guy either, he is only like 45 years old and having all these problems. He has no family and limited money, so he turned to programs that are offered to vets in order to help him. One such organization that name escapes me at the moment helps vets with housing. Because of his situation, he needed some specific things such as a house with only one floor and it should be accessible for him to get around in. He had enough money saved up to buy a piece of land in a neighborhood, but the issue then was the physical house. One thing that I love about our vet community is how strong we all stick together when another one needs our help. The organization came through and a bunch of volunteers, including myself, were going to build the house for him. The issue then became the HOA of the neighborhood trying to put a stop to the entire thing. They had many claims against what we were doing, but the main one was that they were saying that the size of the house being built and the fact it was only one floor was against the HOA guidelines. Now, without even looking at anything, I can tell you that this sounded like total BS that they made up to stop him from living in that area. I don't know if they had something against veterans or disabled people, or if they just wanted to be jerks. No matter what though, they had just started a war with all the veterans in this community and did not know what was going to hit them. When they first came over, they had actually called 911, and it was the police that forced us to stop the building preparations. It did not matter how stupid their rules looked, they had the police on their side and it seemed like there was nothing we could do about it. We had lawyers combing through pages of bylaws trying to find anything stating that a house had to be more than one floor or a certain size to be allowed. Micro homes were not allowed, but we were not building anything close to that small. While it would still probably be the smallest house on the block, it was not going to be by much. The HOA argued that it was not about numbers but building a house that did not fit in with the rest of the houses surrounding it. I could not really listen to all of that crap and my friend was just getting upset and stressed about the whole thing. He literally just wanted a place that he could live in. The HOA was firm though and halted all construction on the house being built. Nobody could do anything because we didn't want the charity organization or the veteran group to get targeted and sued for illegal construction. The HOA had contacted both with letters stating that any action that went against the HOA building permits would result in a lawsuit. Side note, what kind of horrible people threaten to sue charities and veterans? The only thing we could do was to wait and fight it out. They wanted to drag things out as long as possible in hopes that maybe we would just give up and try to build his house somewhere else. He already bought the property and there was a lot of principle when it came to standing your ground and doing what you know to be the right thing. We needed some more power behind us and I knew just what to do in order to put the pressure on the HOA. So I started calling and emailing every single local place that did any type of news. I threw the story out there to everybody about how my friend was being treated by the HOA after all the things he had done for this country. Not many picked it up, but the ones that did caused people to read it and start writing to the HOA. Some even people living in that same neighborhood that had no idea why a property had materials for building and nothing happening for months. And yeah, you read that right, it had been months of the HOA dragging their feet and delaying trying to come to an agreement with us. This sudden pressure though seemed to make them want to come to some sort of solution because the attention they were getting was not good. There were whispers of the HOA needing to be shut down or even a protest being organized against the HOA if they continued to sit around and do nothing in regards to the project. They had run out of ways to deem that it was not allowed, which was why they were ignoring us and not wanting to face the problem. If you mess with a veteran, you're not only going to have problems with that one person, you're going to have problems with other veterans, veterans' family members, actively serving members and their families, as well as just people who support us. For those keeping score at home, that would be about 5 HOA members against a huge community that was out for their blood. When they started getting requests for interviews from media, they suddenly changed their tune. They were saying it was all a misunderstanding and they had just been waiting on paperwork to come through that would allow us to start breaking ground. It was a total lie and they were just trying to not look bad to the public, but I did not really care. People were not letting them out of their line of fire until they actually signed the papers and sent them out, allowing us to finally start building a house for my friend. He was so happy, and while we worked, we would get visited by some neighbors wanting to let us know that they fully supported what we were doing. One neighbor even brought us some drinks because it was hot out, which I thought was really nice. Friend finally had a finished house and it was equipped for him to move around in his wheelchair without any issues. Flat floors the entire way on a single-story house. Cabinets that were low enough for him to access, so if nobody was there to help, he could reach things himself. He only had part-time help medically, but he seemed to do okay on his own from what I can tell. The first thing he wanted to do was invite a bunch of the guys over so that we could finally play dominoes without worrying if some other group took the set. I was glad that we did not give up and put pressure on that HOA until they finally gave in and let us build him a house that would be perfect for him. For those wondering, it looked fine being the only single-story house and did not seem that small compared to the others. It really does make me think that the look of the house not fitting in was not the real reason they did not want us building that house. And yeah, ripe stars, if I would be in that neighborhood, I would not mind a disabled veteran living in a super small house. I would be more concerned about entitled Karen busybodies roaming the streets. If you have ever lived in an HOA neighborhood, feel free to share your own experiences in the comments. The next one is titled Revenge on Terrible Neighbor. Not long after I had moved into my house, I got a dog. About a year later, a new neighbor moved onto our street and he also had a dog. Everything seemed fine to me for about 7-ish months, and then I noticed that the older woman across the street had handmade little signs on sticks stuck into the ground along the front of her lawn saying, "Please don't let your dog poop in my yard." I thought it was pretty funny and chalked it up to her being a cranky old lady. Not long after that, I was cleaning dog poop in my own yard. I had a great designated patch of grass on the opposite side of the driveway, ideal for this, when I scooped a poop that seemed larger than most of my dogs. I figured maybe I had given too many treats. I don't know, I did not think too much of it. A week later, I was doing my daily poop scooping again when I noticed another really large pile of crap, only this time there was a bunch of corn kernels in it. Super disgusting. So I instantly knew this was definitely not my dog's crap. I was pissed. And by the way, ripe stars, I recently read that you should under no circumstances ever give your dog corn cobs. If I remember correctly, it is super unhealthy for them and they can actually die from it, if I am not completely mistaken. Either way, I then remembered the cranky old lady signs. Maybe she was not just cranky and old after all. Or at the very least, justifiably so. I decided I would keep a much closer eye on what was going on in my neighborhood. I pretty much keep to myself and don't bother anyone, so from now on I will do that. One day I am washing dishes at the sink and out the window I see a dog unleashed come running into my backyard. I'm watching, trying to rinse and dry my hands because my dog is flipping out barking. As I get to the door, the unknown dog squats and starts dropping bombs. I flew outside and was about to start yelling at the dog when I saw the owner standing at the end of my driveway watching. I was absolutely astounded. I said, "Hey, your dog just pooped in my yard. What the hell?" He responded with, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you need to clean that up. Right now." He looks around and pats his pockets and says, "I don't have anything to put it in." So I asked why he had not brought a baggie along like a normal courteous person, to which he shrugged and said, "Do you have one I can use?" "Nope." "Sorry, no can do." I told him he would have to go get one and come back and that I would wait. So he did. He walked home, got a bag, and when he returned, I was waiting in my driveway. He cleaned up his dog's mess and we had no issues for the next few months. Towards the end of that spring, I noticed every right to be cranky old lady had her handmade signs up again. Oh no, not again. Did this guy not learn? And damn, how rude. I decided I would have to, again, keep a lookout. About a week and a half later, over Memorial Day weekend, I had some family over. My brother, his wife, and my two nieces, ages 4 and 2, came over for a cookout. The adults were chatting, cooking, having a few drinks, while the kids were playing in the backyard by the garden when my 4-year-old niece comes over and starts tugging on my brother's arm. The smell hit us both instantly. They had been playing in dog poop. And the crap contained the telltale pieces of corn. I thought my brother's wife was going to go ballistic. Who could blame her? And I will tell you that if looks could kill, I would be a cold, decomposing body in the ground right now. She asked me why I would let them play where my dog's bathroom is, and I kept trying to tell her I didn't. We got a designated poop area. I don't know why there was poop, but I did know. Oh boy, did I know. It took everything in me not to march down the street and confront the dog poop man. I decided it would only start trouble because I did not know if I could keep my temper under control. Needless to say, it ruined the cookout and pretty much the whole visit, and I have never been so embarrassed. A week went by and I was still infuriated, even more so after stewing in it. I decided that this called for some good old-fashioned revenge, and I was going to go to school this a-hole once and for all. Spring turned into summer and I let my anger motivate me to be patient. My plan would take some time. As time passed, I continued my daily poop scooping, only now instead of disposing of it, I was collecting it in a bucket with a lid. I would leave it out in the hot sun for maximum odor. After 3.5 humid, scorching summer months of collecting turds, the final phase of the mission was quickly approaching. I think it is worth noting that I did not see Dog Poop Man all summer, or his dog, and I wondered if he had finally learned or gotten an earful from one too many neighbors. Did not matter though. His fate was sealed. I chose a beautiful night. Fall was just around the corner, so the temperatures were cooler and humidity lower. I sat out by the fire and got pretty plastered. Sometime between 2:30 and 3 a.m. I took my bucket of feces and staggered down the street. I remember standing there for a moment smiling as I imagined Dog Poop Man walking out his door in the morning to the sights and smells that awaited him. Then I tore off the lid and flung all that crap everywhere. It was a lot of poop. It was one of the most satisfying things I have ever done. I'm probably going to hell, but it was worth it. I drove by his house the next afternoon and he had hired a cleanup crew. He glared at me as I passed by. He was pissed, but I was smiling, elated. I am willing to bet that man's dog never pooped in anyone's yard again ever. And then a user in the comments wrote, "This was not done by me, but it fits in with your post. I work at a Lowe's and even though the signs say no pets, people bring in their dogs and no one says anything." One day, a woman and her teenage son came in with a little dog and the dog took a dump in the aisle. When the kid pointed it out to his mom, she told him not to worry because the store employees are paid to clean it up. I came back a couple of minutes later with the cleanup equipment and a customer told me he would take care of it. I assumed it was her husband at first, but he told me he is her neighbor and that he's been cleaning up after that effing rodent in his yard for years. About half an hour later, after checking out, the woman came back into the store screaming that someone had smeared dog poop all over her windshield and front side windows, demanding that management find the employee responsible on the video recording and make him or her clean her car. I told the store manager what had happened and he went back to the woman and told her that the parking lot camera had been damaged by weather and she was on her own. He did offer to let her use the cleanup equipment that I had returned to the janitor's closet. Later, he and I, on the PC in his office, watched the neighbor walk out to her car wearing rubber gloves and carrying a paper towel bundle, laughing our heads off as he coated the windshield and windows. And yeah, ripe stars, unfortunately we have reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you did, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much and I see you again tomorrow. And the next one is titled Choosing Beggar Thief. About 15 years ago, I was in a car accident, not my fault, and I was awarded 25k in insurance money as a result. I took the opportunity to move out of my mom's home and get a cute little studio apartment for me and my cat. The people on either side of the courtyard were very nice and I made friends fairly quickly with all of the neighbors despite being so much younger than all of them. After living there for around a year, I met a girl my age and we became, I thought, good friends. She had marriage problems and was separated from her husband, and the 2 children she had were in foster care for reasons she would not tell anyone. She begged me to help her get her kids back from CPS, so I got a list of guidelines from the local office, and together Beggar and I started planning to try to get her children back. I bought her children furnishings and helped her get a job. I even used some of my insurance money to help her get a used car so that she had transportation for her and her kids. And also, she did get her kids back. They had a small 2-bedroom apartment, she slept on the couch and her children each had their own bedrooms. The girl's room was decked out in Dora the Explorer furnishings that I had bought for her, and the boy's room was decorated with sports cars as he requested. It was a lot of money, but I was a sucker and I thought it was a good cause. Soon after getting her kids back, she stopped coming over as often. Her kids came over all the time, but she was usually nowhere to be seen. I found out that she was attempting to settle things with her husband, and he moved in with her, bringing his drug problem with him. I also noticed the sleeping arrangements had changed. They had crammed the children into the smallest bedroom together, pawning off all of the toys and furniture that would not fit. Apparently, they used the money on pills. At this point, I sort of started distancing myself from the beggar because I don't want to be involved with someone doing drugs. I did still watch the kids, however, as I felt bad for them. Their parents were often found loaded up on pills and alcohol. At this point, I was out of insurance money and was working 12-hour shifts with elderly hospice patients as a caregiver. I used a large portion of my income to make sure the kids were fed, since Beggar and her husband spent all their money together on drugs and liquor, and it also meant that I very rarely had time to hike down to the center courtyard to check my mail. I am guessing I had gone a month without looking, expecting that all I had was a few catalogs and several copies of the weekly shopper coupons. I have learned my lesson and I check my mail often now. When I opened my mailbox, I was alarmed by the stack of government-sealed letters that had been wedged in it. There were 6 separate letters, all of which accused me of a different offense. This culminated in me having 5 warrants out for my arrest and a court date. It turns out that Beggar had gotten an old used car from a local junk dealership. The car had, if I can remember the list, no tags, an expired license plate and a missing taillight, so of course it was pulled over. Beggar, being on a probational period with CPS, meaning if she stepped out of the line, they would take her kids away again, panicked and decided that she would lie about her identity. So she said she was me and she was driving without a license and insurance because she had forgotten her purse. The first thing I did was go to her and ask what this was, as I recognized the model of car as the one she was so proud to have gotten. After having pawned the car I helped her get a year prior. I did not even know you could pawn a car, by the way. She smiled at me and simply said,
"You don't have a criminal record, so they won't punish you like they would me. You don't want me to lose my kids again, do you?"
I'm not sure what she expected, but I was beyond caring at that point. I was pissed. The first thing I did was cancel my work for the next few days, and I set about making appointments with a lawyer and the police officer that took Beggar's word that she was me simply because she knew my name and address. The next day I was at the police department where I watched a video of the interaction between the cop and the beggar. Turns out he was a newbie and he just didn't want to get in trouble for taking someone's word when he really shouldn't have. And luckily for me, Beggar's husband was there and she was instructed to switch seats with him because "I cannot allow you to drive without proper ID, ma'am." She then walked around the back of the car in full view of the camera. The officer admitted his mistake since I was not pregnant, my hair was not a gigantic curly mess, and I was a good foot taller than she was. I know I did not mention her being pregnant, but I had to cut some things out. The next day, on my way out to visit my lawyer, I was waylaid by Beggar and Beggar's mom. They were both furious with me for going to the police, and I was instructed to go back to the station and tell them that I made a mistake and that I actually was the one at fault. When I said no, the crap hit the fan. Beggar left, but her mother remained. She stood in my way on the path and would not let me get to my car, all the while screaming about how she was going to tell everyone that I assault children when they were in my care. I was young and that did scare me a little because I did not want to be placed on a list for something I would never ever do. Still though, I recognized that she was screaming these threats in full view of many of the neighbors in my courtyard, many of whom had stepped outside to see what all the fuss was about. The police were called and she was given a warning. I was asked if I wanted to get a restraining order, but for some reason I said no. Over the next few days, CPS approached me and I told them everything. All the while feeling like I should have come forward sooner, the children were again taken into foster care. And that is where all of this should have ended, with me learning a valuable lesson. But nope. In the weeks that followed, Beggar gave my phone number to everybody under the sun. I was called for drugs, sexual favors and even for loans. One of my car's windows was smashed in with a brick and there was shoe polish writing the words "lying a-hole" on the back of the car. At one point people started coming and banging on the door of my apartment in the middle of the night and they shattered my front window and broke my bird feeder. I was saved from taking any legal action for all of this when Beggar's husband and Beggar were thrown in jail for identity theft, buying and selling drugs, and all of the charges that had previously been mine, and child endangerment. There may have been more, but I cannot remember. The apartment hired 24-hour security because of everything that had happened, and they also installed security cameras all around the courtyards.